Start recording. All right, here we go. So again, we reviewed real quick. Welcome if you're watching the recording since we just started. Reviewed real quick that we get the term movie from moving pictures, like we talked about last class, and a bunch of these little crash course ones. So here's our last one about the golden age of Hollywood. So we'll check this out here. So
When I say Hollywood, you probably think of big budget movies, star-studded premieres, and studios with giant backlots pumping out film after film. Most of those associations really began sometime between the 1920s and the 1950s. Once audiences could hear actors speak, listen to pre-recorded musical scores, and enjoy sound effects, film cemented its place as the main medium for mass communication, art, and commerce. And as important as Hollywood was during the silent era, nobody could compete after the arrival of sound. New major film studios emerged, each with their own style and favorite celebrities. Before George Clooney and Jennifer Lawrence, there was Clark Gable and Janet Leigh. This cascade of films led to more technological innovations too, like color film and the widescreen formats we still use today. This was the golden age of Hollywood. Hollywood. Ba-ba-da-ba-da. Okay, I'll stop. After the stock market crash in October of 1929, most parts of the American economy took a real hit, but not Hollywood. And at the height of the Great Depression in 1933, roughly a quarter of the American workforce couldn't find a job, and millions of others were barely making ends meet. So you'd think that the last thing people would do with their hard-earned money was go to the movies. And yet, the Depression was one of the best things to happen to the American film business. That's depressing. In fact, more films were released by the major studios during the 1920s and 30s than any other decade, averaging about 800 a year compared to less than 500 per year today. It was cheaper to go to the movies than a play or a concert, and cinema became a means of escape. As we've talked about, films are an illusion of reality, and that illusion was super attractive to people whose day-to-day reality was often pretty bleak. Genre films became more popular, things like gangster films, musicals, westerns, and screwball comedies. Anything to take people's mind off their own struggles and celebrate good old American values of optimism, resilience, ambition, courage. At the height of Hollywood's golden age, 5 film studios ruled the town. All 5 were vertically integrated, just like the major studios of the silent era. They each had their own distinct reputations and focused on different kinds of films. First up, we have Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, or MGM, which was the biggest studio in the 1930s. Louis B. Mayer ran MGM with his business partner, Irving Thalberg. Mayer was the savvy businessman of the two. He approved the budgets and oversaw the distribution and marketing. Thalberg, on the other hand, was a former producer and the mind behind the stories and actual production. Together, they made slick, big-budget musicals, comedies, melodramas, and literary adaptations, sparing no expense on sets, costumes, extras, and the biggest movie stars. Think of The Wizard of Oz, Gone with the Wind, and Mutiny on the Bounty. I'm talking opulence, people. Next is Paramount Pictures, which was known as the most European studio because they lured a lot of filmmakers away from Germany and the UK. They also gave these filmmakers more leeway to put their own stamp on movies. Hits like Shanghai Express, The Sign of the Cross, and Morocco. Our third player, Warner Brothers, branded itself as the studio of the working class. They turned out low-budget melodramas, gritty gangster movies like The Public Enemy with James Cagney, and musicals set in the Depression like Footlight Parade with James Cagney. The fourth major...
So think about if any of these studios still ring a bell and are still around today. Some of them are, some of them aren't, probably because they've been absorbed by the other ones. But this gives you an idea of how they all kind of started. And as he's saying, back in the day, each studio kind of had its own lane. He's saying Warner Brothers was kind of like more grittier, like gangster movies and musicals, and some of the other ones were more big budget films like The Wizard of Oz and stuff. Where versus now today, we have studios that make all kinds of movies.
Major studio was 20th Century Fox, which made its reputation thanks to its chief director and its most profitable star, not James Cagney. The director was John Ford, who won back-to-back Best Director Oscars for The Grapes of Wrath and How Green Was My Valley, while Shirley Temple sang and danced her way through a string of wholesome hits. And lastly, RKO was the home of the extremely popular Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers musicals. Can I do a dance number, Nick? Nope. RKO also took a lot of chances, producing everything from Howard Hawks' screwball comedy Bringing Up Baby to the 1933 version of King Kong, and one of the most influential films of all time, Citizen Kane.
And you're also noticing a lot of stars are signed to specific studios. Not like today, we're like, okay, Jennifer Lawrence will be in a movie made by Warner Brothers, and then she'll be in one made by Columbia or Fox or whatever it is, because they just go from movie to movie. But back in the day, that's how the studios kind of became successful and stuck around. It was like, okay, we have these certain stars that only work with our studio, and then that's what they become known for.
Never heard of it. Now, all 5 5 of these studios dominated the production, distribution, and exhibition of films for a while, but a U.S. Supreme Court case in 1948, along with the coming of television, signaled a major turning point. In the case, known as United States versus Paramount Pictures, the government argued that the major studios were in violation of antitrust laws. In other words, by owning both the production studios and the movie theaters, they were exercising an unfair monopoly and stifling competition. The Supreme Court agreed and forced the studios to break up their business, sell their theaters, and focus on just production and distribution. Hollywood continued to lead the global film market for another 10 or 15 years, but that near complete control over the industry was ending. We'll talk a lot more about this next time. Now, the golden age of Hollywood saw some major technical leaps in the film business too, including color. Filmmakers have been experimenting with color since the dawn of cinema. The earliest techniques involved hand-tinting individual frames, a painstaking process that had to be repeated for each print of each film. Not great. Over the next few decades, engineers found ways to use stencils to tint films much faster. They also developed other means of adding color, like bathing the film stock in dyes that fit the mood of the scene, called toning. Red for violence, blue for sorrow, green for grassy. By the mid-1920s, nearly 90% of Hollywood films were either tinted, toned, or some combination of the two, which was great, except color itself looked wildly artificial. And once Hollywood converted to sound-on-film technology, the interfered with the film stock's ability to record proper sound. Crash Course Film History, TLDR, it's hard. So filmmakers needed to figure out color cinematography, capturing color with the image. As early as 1861, a Scottish physicist named James Clerk Maxwell, who we talked about in Crash Course Physics, well, I didn't, Shinny did, built the foundations of color photography. The light all around us is made up of a spectrum of different wavelengths, some of which we see as visible colors. Knowing this, Maxwell figured out that all these colors can be derived from some combination of red, yellow, and blue. Beginning in 1906, artists and engineers tried for 15 years to use this technology to achieve color cinematography. But, much like me in high school, they kept failing. Their experiments were unreliable or too expensive. Then, along came Technicolor. In 1922, the Technicolor Corporation saw its first success with a special beam-splitting camera that could make two separate negatives. The light entered the camera and was split into different wavelengths, just like how sunlight hits a prism and splits into a rainbow. Half continued straight ahead, while the other half was diverted 90 degrees to produce two film negatives. These negatives were chemically treated, dyed either red or blue, and cemented together. Then you could run that final film strip through a regular projector, and voila! Even though they weren't spot on, the colors in these films were more reliable and accurate than any of the earlier attempts. And while that beam-splitting camera was expensive, at least theaters didn't have to buy new projectors to show color films. Over the next decade, Technicolor expanded its system into a three-color process, with a camera that recorded the original image into three separate negatives, red, blue, and green. And by 1932, this process created such high-quality, vibrant results that Technicolor ended up with a virtual monopoly on color film for the next 20 years.
So you notice in that little kind of animation there, if that's look familiar, it's because it was from The Wizard of Oz, right? Which is widely regarded as the first kind of major film to come out in Technicolor. And if you've ever seen The Wizard of Oz, you know what happens. It starts in black and white, and then when she gets to Oz, bam! Now everything is in this beautiful, bright, vibrant color. And at the time when that came out in 1933, I think, or somewhere around there, that had never been done on that scale before. So that's why it was such a big deal when it came out.
Throughout the 1930s, filmmakers and studios gradually began playing around with Technicolor. By the middle of the decade, producer David O. Selznick turned a corner by casting big stars in color films for the first time. And as the 1930s came to a close, Hollywood released a series of high-profile hits that proved color was here to stay. These films that use Technicolor range from the Errol Flynn swashbuckler The Adventures of Robin Hood to classics like The Wizard of Oz and Gone with the Wind, and even animated features like Disney's Snow White and Pinocchio. Advances in color cinematography would continue to develop over the years, but the basics stayed the same until film stock gave way to digital video in the 21st century. Now, a third technical element of cinema was standardized during the golden age of Hollywood. It's a little something called aspect ratio. That's the ratio of the movie screen's width to its height. Back in 1932, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, the folks who give out the Oscars, established a standard aspect ratio of 4:3, which looks like this. Also known as the Academy aperture, this ratio isn't a square, but it's closer to a square than we're used to these days. That's because most movies we see today are shot in an aspect ratio of 16:9, which looks like this. That's more like it. We often call this widescreen, and so much film and TV is shot at this ratio that most new screens are built to fit it. But those are just two possible aspect ratios. Back in the 1950s, some filmmakers experimented with an extreme widescreen ratio called Cinerama. This process involved shooting a film with three separate synchronized cameras hooked together in an arc and projecting that from three synchronized projectors. Weird. The screen was shaped in a similar arc, kind of wrapping itself around the audience, for a real immersive experience. And the final aspect ratio of Cinerama was about 8:3, which looks like this. The most famous film shot in Cinerama was the Western epic How the West Was Won. But, as you can probably guess, this process was too expensive and complicated to achieve widespread use. It was bad for performers' necks. On the heels of Cinerama came CinemaScope. Rather than shooting with multiple cameras, CinemaScope utilized something called an anamorphic lens. This was a special lens for cameras that recorded a wider image but squeezed it laterally so that everything would fit onto standard 35mm film stock. When the film was projected, a similar lens attached to the projector would unsqueeze the image, expanding it back out and projecting it up onto the screen. The result was an impressive 2:55:1 aspect ratio. Audiences got their first taste of it in the 1953 biblical epic, The Robe, and by the end of that year, every major Hollywood studio except Paramount was licensed to make CinemaScope films. Over time, the ratio was reduced to 2:35:1, and in the mid-1950s, the American film industry had almost entirely converted to shooting anamorphic widescreen films. It took some time for filmmakers to adjust to widescreen shooting. When you move from an aspect ratio of 4:3 to 16:9, that's a whole lot of extra room to fill. So what do you do with it? Well, we fill it with, like, knickknacks and stuff. Close-ups, especially of faces, became difficult to frame, while landscapes got easier. At first, widescreen films rewarded composition and long takes over editing. Filmmakers built their stories by filling the frame rather than cutting to new images. Genres like the Western, the musical, and large-scale epics all lent themselves to these kinds of world-building possibilities. In the end, the technical advancements of sound, color, and an aspect ratio that could surround the audience made the powerful Hollywood studios the center of the cinematic universe from the late 1920s to the late 1950s. It was a golden age whose echoes are felt in our films today. Today, we learned about how the American studio system took advantage of sound film and the Great Depression to achieve global dominance. We discussed the development of color cinematography and what it meant for filmmakers and film audiences. And we examined aspect ratio and how the move to widescreen cinema affected films being made. Next time, we'll learn about how filmmakers in Europe and the United States reacted against the formulaic movies coming out of Hollywood and created a new wave of gritty, irreverent, and innovative cinema. Crash Course Film History is produced in association.
All right, so let me turn my volume booster off here. All right, so I see we have, oh, looks like we had some people come in and out. All right, so Jaden has joined us. Welcome. It looks like we lost Naima, but that's okay. All right, so Jaden, let me get you on my attendance here. Okay. All right, so our last Crash Course video there. And again, if you guys like those kind of videos, like as a good little kind of review tools and stuff, I really do. There's a bunch of them on YouTube for a bunch of different subjects. So you can just Google those guys. So I have a question here to kind of sum up that one and wrap this this up, and then I will show you guys what I want you to work on from now until we meet again on Monday, or I should say for the progress report, right? But our question to wrap up that last video is, let me see how I can word this here in the best way. All right, so this is going to be a multiple choice question for this one. All right, so here's our wrap-up question here. Which of the following was a big part of the innovation of the golden age of Hollywood cinema? In other words, which of these did, really became an important thing in filmmaking, at this time that we still kind of use today? Sound, color, aspect ratio, which again is the kind of height and width of the shot, or all the above. All right. You can throw your answer up in the chat. You can just put the letter in there if you want to. I already got one from Nakai. She says D, all the above. So let's see if we can get a few more answers in there as well. So I'll give you guys a few minutes here to answer this. Tell me what you think. All right, still only got one answer in there. It's from Nakai. Great job, Nakai. Thank you. So let me see if I can get at least one or two more for that question. Which of the following was a big part of the innovation of the golden age of Hollywood cinema? Was it sound? Was it color? Was it the aspect ratio? Or was it all of the above? All of them. Who else can venture a guess or an answer to that question? And again, you can just put the letter in there of the selection. You don't need to put the whole thing if that's a little bit easier. But let me see if I can get one or two more up in the chat before we move on here. All right, I got one from Ashley. She says D as well. Sammy says A. Taking a guess. That's okay. Thank you guys for throwing them in there. D is in fact correct. All of those were big. Because we broke out of the silent film era, right? When we reached the kind of like late 20s, early 30s. And then we have the Technicolor era in around like the 1933 with Wizard of Oz, right? Where we learn how to shoot in different colors and create the different negatives and put them all together, right? And then we have the aspect ratio, so we get widescreen and cinemascope and all those kind of wide shots and stuff. If you've seen like Quentin Tarantino films like The Hateful Eight, he does that a lot of the time. He uses those kind of shots, right? So all big parts of the golden age of Hollywood, right? So thank you guys for answering that. That's great. All right. Now, ladies and gents, what I want to do is this, okay? To wrap this kind of background stuff up, um, I would like to have you guys do a web quest. All right, I'm going to share my screen real quick and show you um, what this is going to look like. All right. Okay. See, oh shoot. All right. So you will all get a email in your Yes Philly email that I've shared this Google Doc with you. All right. And you can see it has a couple different sections of questions. All right. Not too long. And you're using the links to answer all the questions. So everything on here you'll be able to answer from the links that are on here. All right. Now, I know we only have about 20 minutes left today, so I'd like to have this done by first thing Monday morning so I can put it on your progress report, meaning I should have it shared back with me by like 8 a.m. on Monday. So you have today, tomorrow, the whole weekend, so that I'm able to include it on our progress reports, right, for this first one, right? How you're going to work on this, okay? Is when you get it shared with you, right? And make sure you're following along here because this can be a little bit tricky if you don't know. But how you're going to work on this is when you get it shared with you so that everybody is not working all on the same one. You're going to go up here to where it says file, right? And then you're going to go up here to where it says make a copy, right? And then you'll know you're doing it right if it says copy of filmmaking web quests in the title here. And then you're going to save this to wherever on your desktop, in your laptop, or wherever, right? And then you're going to hit OK. And then a new one should pop up that says copy of up here, right? I'm not going to do it now because I already have the original one, but that way it'll let you work on it and we won't all be working on the same one. And then you'll be able to share that one back to me when you're finished. Okay. So that's how we're going to work on this one. So give me a thumbs up or a yes if that makes sense in the chat so I know everybody is on the same page with how we're going to do this. And while you guys are doing that, I'm going to share it with all of you now. All right. Ashley May, thank you. All right. Again, if that makes sense on how you're going to work on this, making a copy of the Google Doc, let me know in the chat. Give me a yes or give me a thumbs up so that I know everybody's on the same page and there's no questions. Okay. All right. So you should all have just gotten this in your yes filling email. All right. And again, one more time, because I only have one thumbs up in the chat right now, just as a refresher. Okay. You get this in your yes fill email, you open it up, it looks like this. You're going to come up here to where it says file. You're going to click on make a copy. All right. It's going to say copy up, blah, 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 up here. All right. You're going to hit OK, and then a new one should pop up, right? That says copy of up here. That's how you know you've made a copy, because in the title it will say copy of Filmmaking WebQuest. And then you're going to close out the original one and then work from the copy. And then when you're finished, you can share that copy back with me again. All right. And so now I can already see, because I'm on the original, excuse me, I can already see that because I'm on the original that Sammy has accessed it. All right. So great job. So then what you're going to want to do, Sammy, and everybody else, once you get yours or once you open yours up, is like I just said, go up to file, make a copy, and then work from the copy, close this one out. And then when I see your little icon go away up here, that's how I'll know that you've made your copy and you're not working from the original again. Okay. And the reason we're doing that, ladies and gents, again, is so that, as you know, in Google Docs, when you share something, everybody can edit it. So I don't want everybody to be editing on the original, because then everybody else will see the answers and stuff like that. I want you all to be working on your own. Okay. So that's what I want you to be doing for the rest of today. And then, like I said, I'll be checking for this first thing Monday morning to go on progress reports, which are going to come out next week. So I want to give you guys the full weekend to work on this, but should be able to do it in no time at all. Maybe like half hour, 45 minutes or so, because you're following these links, right, to answer these questions. Okay. And then, like I said, this will give us, the last bit of our kind of comprehensive background of history of film and movie making. And then we can start diving into our film analysis next week. Okay. All right. Hey, Jaden, welcome back. Glad you were able to get back on. What we're doing here is and I'll share this with you since you are back on here now. We're working on this web quest, right? I've put it on a Google Doc that I have shared with everybody. When you get it in your Yes Philly email, what I want you to do is go up here to where it says file. And hang on, let me see who else is here. Oh, Nishan's back. Awesome. So again, when you get this in your Yes Philly email, I want you to go up here where it says file and then make a copy, right? And then it'll look like this, and then you just hit OK, and then a new one should pop up that says copy of Filmmaking WebQuest up here, and that's how you know you've done it correctly. And then I want you to close out the original and work from the copy, and that way you can share the copy with me when you're done, so everybody is working on their own WebQuest. All right.
So you want us to copy the document and make our own?
So you don't have to, and let me share this with you real quick. So you don't have to copy and paste it. If you follow those steps that I just showed you, if you go up to where it says file and then hit make a copy, Google Docs will create a second version that will say copy of, and that's a version that you can work on, but your answers won't show up on the original that I've made for everybody to see. So it's kind of like, since we're virtual and I can't pass out a copy to each of you like on paper, this is another way to do it since we're all working virtually. So let me share this with you. All right, so Jaden, you should be getting that in your Yes Philly email now, right? And Nishan, I will send it to you as well. And again, remember, one more time here, when you open yours up, right, you're going to come up here to where it says File, and then you're going to hit Make a Copy, and then it should say Copy of Filmmaking WebQuest. You're just going to hit OK, and then, oh, I did it by mistake. But this is actually good because then it'll show you what I mean. And so now you can see up here on mine, it says Copy of Filmmaking WebQuest. And that's how I know I've made a copy. So then I would go back here and close out the original, and I would work from the copy. All right. Now I'll have to go back and delete that one from my drive, but that gives you a good example of what I'm talking about. All right. So that's what I want you to do here. So let me know if you are having any trouble with that. That's what you should be working on for the rest of this morning. We got about 10, 15 minutes or so left. And then again, I'm going to be looking for this first thing Monday morning. Okay. If you're working from your phone and you're just copy and pasting it into a new Google Doc, that does work. I don't know how the formatting is going to be. That's why, if you can, access your laptop or your Chromebook and make a copy of it, that might work a little better. But if that's working for you right now, that's fine. If you're not at your laptop right now and you are going to make a copy of it and work from it later, no worries there as well. I know everybody's kind of doing stuff differently. And if your internet is being weird, obviously do the best you can, right? So, ladies and gents, that is all I have for you today. If you have no questions about the WebQuest, what you're doing, how to make a copy of it, you are good to go. And like I said, I'll be looking for this first thing Monday morning, meaning like 8 a.m. So have it done before then, right? Because I have to have it by then to be able to put it into progress reports. Okay. I will stay in the chat for another few minutes here. But if you have no other questions, you are good to go. Log off and get working on this. You can also stay in the chat if you have questions and ask me here too. But that's all I have for you guys today. Right. So I will see you all again on Tuesday. Don't forget report card night Thursday from 5:30 to 6:30. And again, progress reports, everything to do Friday. This I want first, at the latest, first thing Monday morning, so I can include it on there. Okay. I'll also be in the Summit Lab. If you have questions on stuff, you can come see me there as well. But if you're good to go with this, you have no questions, then feel free to jump out. Oh, and Nishan, let me send it to you. Right, Nishan, can you put your Yes Philly email in the chat to me real quick, so that I make sure I send it to the correct one.
Yeah, I got you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so I will share this doc with you, and then again, you're doing the same thing, make a copy of it, and work from there. Right, so you should be good there, Nishan. Ashley and Nakaya, you guys should be good. Let me know if you guys have questions. I'm going to be in the chat for a few more minutes, and then if I don't hear from anybody, I'll just go ahead and close it out for today. You guys should be good to go. All right, thank you guys. All right, I'm going to go ahead and end the chat then. If you have any other questions, you can see me in the Summit Lab later today from 1 to 3 at this same link, or just shoot me an email or a Hangouts message. All right, and I will see you all again on Tuesday. Or no, on Friday. Sorry, forgot what day it was. All right, have a good one. Have a good rest of the week. I will see you again then. And great job. See you guys.